The High Court in London is going to hear today what could be the final bid by the Wikileaks founder Julian Assange to avoid extradition to the United States. Mr Assange, who's an Australian citizen, is wanted in the US for leaking secret military files over a decade ago. He's been fighting extradition on espionage charges for 5 years now. Well, in the last half hour, we heard from his wife, Stella Assange, who spoke outside court. Let's hear what she had to say.
There is no possibility of a fair trial if Julian is extradited to the United States. He should never be extradited to the United States. He would never be safe. The United States plotted to murder my husband. He is being accused of journalism. This case is an admission by the United States that they now criminalize investigative journalism. It's an attack on all journalists all over the world. It's an attack on the truth, and it's an attack on the public's right to know. Julian is a political prisoner and his life is at risk. What happened to Navalny can happen to Julian. He has to be released. This farce has to end.
Well, let's speak to our reporter, Nikki Schiller, who is at the High Court this morning. Nikki, we described this as possibly the final bid by Julian Assange to avoid extradition. What exactly is happening there over the next 2 days?
Yeah, so it is a 2-day extradition hearing, and it all hinges on a decision that was made by the High Court in 2021 when it said that extradition could take place. Up until that point, Julian Assange's lawyers had argued that he risked taking his own life if he was sent to the United States because of the mental health stress on him. Now, in 2022, the Supreme Court upheld the ruling that he could be extradited, and the then Home Secretary Priti Patel signed that extradition order. What is happening for the next 2 days is Julian Assange's lawyers are seeing if they can challenge that ruling. They say that he shouldn't be extradited to the United States. They say that this case is politically motivated and that his mental health has deteriorated in the 5 years that he has been in prison. And his wife, Stella, who you heard from there, says that this is a life and death case situation now for Mr Assange and that he wouldn't survive if he was extradited to the United States. So a decision we are expecting one way or the other. If the appeal is rejected, then there is a possibility that Mr Assange's lawyers can go to the European Human Court of Human Rights to see if they could actually stop the plane from taking off. But we wait to see what the decision is over the next 2 days here, Anna.
Yeah, and you're in the thick of things this morning, Nikki. We're watching live pictures of the scene around you, the demonstrators, the supporters. What has been happening there?
Yeah, so I arrived probably around 8 o'clock this morning, and there were a dozen or so, maybe more, people who were here with lots of placards, and they tied yellow ribbons around the outside of the High Court. Now, that number has swelled to hundreds, as you can see, and they are still outside the court holding those placards saying that Mr Assange should be freed and shouting, "Free Julian Assange now, stop the extradition." And they've heard from a number of speakers who addressed the crowd, including Mr Assange's wife, who, when she said "Free Julian Assange," the crowd all started chanting that after her. She said to the crowd that she didn't know what to expect over the next couple of days, but that she said the world was watching and they have to know that they can't get away with this, and that Julian needs his freedom and we all need the truth. We've heard from a number of speakers, the former Union leader Len McCluskey, the former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, all addressing the crowd and using the argument that you have mentioned, that it is about press freedom. And a number of organisations have said if Mr Assange is extradited, then journalists around the world will think twice before going ahead and publishing whistleblower information, which is what Julian Assange did back in 2010, which is what has led to this case. You may remember back in 2010, Wikileaks published a whole tranche of US government secrets about the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. It totaled hundreds of thousands of pieces of information, and the US government said that that put lives at risk, which is why they want him, and they've charged him with 18 charges under the Espionage Act, and want him extradited to the US to face those charges.
Thank you, Nikki. Nikki Schiller there outside the High Court in London will, of course, keep you up to date with that developing story across the day here on BBC News.